Welcome to another Jabba's Palace roll call. Today's character, Loje Nella.
Hey, Jabba. Look, Jabba, I was just on my way to pay you back, and I got a little sidetracked.
I'm sure most of you watching this remember this scene from Return of the Jedi when Han Solo was just woken from his carbonite sleep and he's talking to Jabba. I've certainly seen this scene dozens of times, but I did not remember until I started working on this video that this character right here in the middle was in it. We can slow this down just a little bit to give you a bit better look at the character. I guess it's not that strange that I didn't remember it being here because you have two very recognizable and brightly colored characters and one, very dimly lit character in the background. We can go ahead and brighten this up just a little bit to give you an even better view. And there you can see pretty clearly what this character actually looks like. Now, this is essentially the only appearance of this character in Star Wars media, although if we look slightly earlier in the film in the special edition of Return of the Jedi, you can see just there a glimpse of who I believe is the same character. We can lighten that up just a little bit, and you see there by the pillar, there's a clump of something that looks like it could be the same alien. But who exactly is this character, and how do they get into the film? That's what we're going to try and explain today. I think the best way of learning about how this was created during production of Return of the Jedi would be to look at this snippet of an interview between Judy Elkins, who worked on Jedi, and Tom Spina of Regal Robot.
We have one called the Toadstool Terror.
Oh, yeah.
Um,
It's not my favorite.
so,
It was another one of those where it was a multi-generational Xerox
right.
copy. I really couldn't tell what was going on. I had to have Phil explain what is it? what is it doing? And he said, well, it was kind of like a toadstool with some eyes or something. And so it just kind of grew there. But I really, I had a lot of I really struggled with that because I just really couldn't visualize it in my head what it was supposed to be and what it would look like in 3D. So I just kind of did the best I could with it.
Right.
I never really liked. I think it did get chosen though because we did make a full size.
He got made. Yeah. There's one or two shots of him in the movie. He's barely in there, but there's some good behind the scenes photos of him.
We called the full size one Wonton Terror because it was fabricated with the black foam and covered with rubber skin, and it looked kind of like a wonton or something. So the Wonton Terror.
Yeah, I think he's kind of neat. The maquette is cool on him because it's chunky, it's big. It's got a lot of heft to it. There's a lot of sculpey in there. And what is kind of neat is the sculpt on him feels a little more classical or rougher in the textures, whereas Yak Face is actually a little more polished. He has a little more skin texture. He's a little more refined.
So to summarize, it seems that the original concept artwork was done by Joe Johnston. It was passed on to Judy Elkins in the form of a fairly bad quality Xerox copy. She then turned that into a three-dimensional maquette made of clay that was used as reference for making the final puppet made of foam. Now, interestingly, this picture you're seeing right here is from the Star Wars Chronicles book, and it says, "Made but not used." And this is not the only place I've seen people say that this creature never made it into Return of the Jedi. Star Wars Insider number 60 from 2002. There was an article called Who's Who in Jabba's Palace, and generally speaking, it's a good resource for the more obscure characters in the palace, but in the section on this character, they said that it never made it onto the big screen, which, as we can tell now, is definitely not true, but I think it's kind of understandable. If you compare these images from the maquette and also the kind of raw, life-sized puppet head, you'll see that there's one major difference, and that's that they decided at some point to put what appears to be a bunch of moss on the character's head. You can see it a little bit better here. So I could certainly understand them not realizing that this is in fact the same character. As was mentioned earlier in the video, this character was known as Toadstool Terror, or perhaps Wonton Terror, just based on its physical appearance. Personally, I think it looks a little bit more like a king cobra with its hood extended. But later on, in 1998, Decipher, in their Star Wars collectible card game, came out with a card that gave this character some much-needed background and also an in-universe name, Loje Nella. The card goes on to explain that Loje Nella is an accountant, one of many accountants in Jabba's palace, descended from a species of cliff-boring worm, and that they are purposely trying to mismanage Jabba's funds to kind of sabotage his criminal enterprise, which I think is hilarious. I mean, just the idea that Jabba has a worm for an accountant and that that worm is working against him definitely fits what we know about Jabba's palace. That article I mentioned earlier from Star Wars Insider magazine refers to the character as he, but this later entry in the complete Star Wars encyclopedia does refer to the character as a she. I don't know what the reasoning behind this is, except that perhaps Loja Nella sounds kind of like a female name. But since this is the latest kind of a canonical reference to the character, we're going to be referring to her as a she. A big part of these Jabba's Palace roll call videos is me showing you all the merchandise that has been made for a particular character, but in this case, this card is the only thing that's been created officially for this character. There is one weird footnote, though. In the year 2000, there was a young reader's book that came out in the Jedi Apprentice series called The Shattered Piece, and on the cover you can see that they have used Lojanella as the basis for the head of one of the characters, who is supposed to be a member of the Rutanian race, but there's no real connection to the actual character from Jabba's palace, however, and there isn't much in the way of unofficial merchandise either. Of course, some people have made customs and things like that, but in terms of things that you can actually buy, the only thing I could find was this 3D printed figure from Trash Compactor Customs, which I do actually have somewhere, but can't seem to locate at the moment. They have two different versions, one with arms and one without, depending on your preference. But you'll be glad to know that Regal Robot has our back. They're going to be releasing a officially licensed replica of the original concept maquette by Judy Elkins, the one that was used in Return of the Jedi to create the puppet that we saw briefly on screen. And I think if you take a look at it here amongst the other maquettes that Regal Robot has released, you can see it really does have quite a presence. Here's the maquette itself, and I think it looks really impressive. It's quite a tall size. I think it's about 8 or 9 inches tall, including the base, which makes it really stand out among some of the smaller maquettes that they've done. But, even aside from that, it's a cool sculpt, nicely painted. I really like these glass eyes that they've used, just like they did with the original maquette. Gives it kind of a little bit of personality. I think I always like those. But yeah, it looks really cool. Not the most major character, of course, and that's true with a number of the ones that we've talked about in this series, but I think when you look at it, especially as a whole, if you're collecting the archive collection kind of as a whole, it really does add something to the display, and I'm really happy to have it in my case. Now, in addition, of course, to the maquette itself, if you get the Legacy Edition, you will get a piece of unique artwork, and here is mine. This is by Ms. Elkins. She did 55 of these, which must have been quite a challenge with this kind of character because, not a lot of differences in terms of facial expression or outfit or anything. You can't really do much of anything except maybe change the way it's, the direction it's looking or whatever. In her case, she also used some different colors, which I think is a cool choice. Here we've got yellow and I guess just, pencil. But it really looks kind of cool, I think. I really like the way this turned out. Of course, you've got her signature there on the bottom. I think this looks really cool together. These are going to be available this coming Tuesday, the 5th of August at noon Eastern. You can pre-order these. These are quite limited, as you might expect from the relatively minor status of this character. They're doing 125 of the regular signature edition and then 55 of the Legacy Edition that comes with the unique artwork. The signature edition is going to be priced at $3.99 and the Legacy Edition is going to be $6.99. The Legacy Edition, I'll have to say, has been selling out really fast in particular, so if you do think you want that is something I would not sleep on. Probably get there fairly soon afternoon if you want to actually get one of those. But yeah, I think this is a great addition to the collection, and I'm really happy to add it to my own collection as well. Thanks very much for watching, and we'll see you again soon.